Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Coffee with Content Creators podcast. My name is Rob Balasabas. I'm the host of the podcast. Really glad to have you here. Normally in this podcast, we're kind of chatting about, creator economy stuff and talking to different creators and influencers and industry experts and, how do you build your business with your content, with your audience. And today is going to be a little bit of a bit of a different episode. I wanted to kind of share how I got into tech, and not to just talk about myself, but it actually comes up quite often in private conversations and DMs and messages when I see people in person, when I go to conferences and things like that, and people are like, "Hey, Rob, like, you know." You are first they asked me like, "Hey Rob, what do you do, what's your role?" And I'm like, "Hey, I'm head of partnerships and community at a company called Uscreen, and we are a video membership platform. We build kind of like Netflix but for creators and entrepreneurs." And that's kind of like my elevator pitch whenever somebody would say like, "Hey Rob, nice to meet you, what do you do?" And then depending on how they kind of receive that elevator pitch, then the conversation goes a couple different ways. Usually they'll understand maybe what it is that I do, like, "Oh, okay, cool. So you guys build OTT apps," or "Cool, you work with influencers. Okay, cool. Like you're in the creator economy," or like, "Oh," and or it goes the other way. They're like, "Oh, so YouTubers can make money full time. There's people that do this full time," and that's a completely different conversation. And so, that's kind of where it's at. But then, eventually they're like, "Well, how did you get to this role? What's the backstory?" And I thought, I would just share that here on the podcast. I mean, usually we're kind of talking about how to make money with content and all that stuff, and so today might be a little bit of a different break, a bit of a story time, I guess, episode. So I guess first of all, if you guys are here, welcome. If it's your first time, welcome. If we've never met yet, welcome. Really glad that you're here. That's awesome. I would love to just connect with you. So feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, or share this on Instagram. Tag me. My handle on Instagram is at Rob's other account. Long story. There's another story to that whole new handle. Or you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I would love to connect with you. All right. Really important. I love connecting with the folks that are listening to the podcast. And yeah, really glad that you're here. If you've been here before, welcome back. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. And yeah, really excited that we're here, that we can record this podcast. And it is almost the end of my day. And so I won't take up much of your time, but I just want to share how I got into tech. I'm not going to go through the whole thing of like, well, way back when on a rainy day back in 1981. No, I'll kind of cut through and kind of fast forward a little bit. I went to college, went to marketing college, or I went to college for marketing. And then I did a bunch of jobs. I did a bunch of odd jobs, sales roles, marketing roles. I was in real estate for a minute. Um, what else was I doing? Man, during college, I had a job where I was working at there's a store called A&B Sound. If you're in Vancouver and you were grew up in the 90s, you would know what that is. I worked there. My first job actually was McDonald's. I was 16, maybe 15. I was in grade 10, and I was like, "Hey, got to get a job after school or on the weekends." And yeah, going to different places, handing out my resumes, and yeah, McDonald's. I went up to McDonald's in the neighborhood, and they said, "Cool, can I see the manager?" All right, here's my resume, and cool. All right, why don't you come back? Let's do a sort of an on-the-job interview. And they made me come back the next day after school. They made me clean the dining room, kind of wipe the tables and, pick up the garbage that people have left after they ate, put the trays away and stuff. And then, yeah, and then went back to the manager, and he's like, "Cool, when can you start?" And then that was it. That was my first job at McDonald's. I did every role there basically because I was there for a couple years during high school, and so I learned a lot. I mean, some people laugh at that role, but it's like my first job, and actually, honestly, it looked really good on my resume from my point of view. When I got future jobs after that first one at McDonald's, they really liked that they had McDonald's, because of the systems that they had, the training, all that stuff. So, anyways, that was my first job. Fast forward. I was working at a digital marketing agency. A friend of mine had started it. And so there's about three or four of us, a tiny little marketing agency. And, we had, we kind of moved around. We were at one point living at the owner's, we were working out of the owner's kitchen and living room, and then we also then moved to an office, sort of in the industrial part outside of downtown Vancouver. Then we had an office in downtown Vancouver, and so that's sort of the last spot. And while I was there at the office, well, we were working at the office in downtown Vancouver. There's another company just a few floors above us, and it was called Lemon Stand. And they were basically like a Shopify competitor at the time. This was around 20, I want to say 2016. And one of the guys that we'd come by, we would kind of have like, it was kind of like cool to do like a Friday afternoon, happy hour, Friday afternoon beers at the tech company or like the digital agency, and so we would kind of, every Friday we'd get together and we'd meet some of the guys there, and we'd like kind of talk shop, and met this guy named Sid at Lemon Stand. Sid Barath. Sid, if you're listening, man, what's up? Missed your birthday, but I was traveling, so I had a good excuse. But yeah, Sid, awesome guy. Got really bright. He was running marketing at Lemon Stand at the time. And we got to know each other really well. We'd see each other in the elevators. We'd kind of bump into each other. We'd go and grab tacos on Taco Tuesdays. Downstairs at the Mexican restaurant and stuff, and for lunch every now and then. It was cool. And then one I don't know what day it was. It was like middle of the week, one Wednesday or Tuesday. I was like, I came up to Lemon Stand, and then they're like, "Yeah, no, Sid's not here anymore." I'm like, "Oh shoot, where'd he go?" And so I messaged him on LinkedIn. He's like, "Hey Rob, yeah, no, I actually moved on. I'm actually working at this startup. It's called Thinkific." I was like, "Okay, cool. Like, what are you guys doing, and what are you up to? That's awesome. Congrats." He's like, "Oh yeah, man. You know what? Let me tell you all about it. Why don't you come by, grab coffee? We're just down the street." Down the street meant at this area called Crosstown, Railtown in Vancouver. If you're in Vancouver, you come back to, if you've been to Vancouver, you'll kind of know what that is. But it's kind of like this, like very, how would you say, like hipster kind of part of town. It's not quite the bad part, but it's also not quite the good part. It's kind of like the crosstown, I guess, is what we kind of refer to, but it's kind of like that transition zone. There's like some like real, for example, Aritzia, which is a big retailer, had their head offices there. There's a lot of like fancy like coffee shops, and there was this place called Railtown Cafe. It had delicious food, really expensive. I mean, it wasn't cheap, but it wasn't like Michelin, but it wasn't cheap. It was a little bit more than McDonald's. And then there were startups, and that's kind of where we were. But then there was also a lot of like homeless, a lot of like folks that were homeless. There were a lot of like sort of recovery centers and things like that. And so it was a real mishmash. It was like a real like sort of like this transition part of Vancouver. And that's where the office was. And so he's like, "Yeah, come by." So I like came by. It was when I got there, it was a warehouse. It was a warehouse. It literally had garage, sort of like the pull up garage doors, and it was open. And then so you go in. As soon as you get in, you imagine you're in the kitchen. Like there's garage doors from the street. You go in. There's like this like fence door, that swings open, and you go in, you're in the kitchen, and then you get past the kitchen, and then you're in the office. But it's like basically a warehouse with desks. There was actually a container like a shipping container that was inside that was turned into like the boardroom. And so it's just an awesome, like really cool kind of like really eclectic, sort of spot. And saw Sid. He's like, hey, cool, man. This, let me take you around. Let me introduce you to some people. I was like, cool. Got to meet some people there. And then I met the COO, which was Miranda at the time, and got to talk to her, and basically it became an interview. And I was like, you know what, this is cool. Like, I love what you guys are doing. I was like, what do you guys do anyway? And they're like, we do online courses. It's like, we're a software for online courses. And I was like, okay, interesting. Up until this time, I've been really doing a lot of. I'm working at a digital agency, and so I'm doing a lot of things, wearing a lot of hats, building WordPress sites, doing SEO, backlinks, doing some social media management, some ads for different companies, right? Different trades companies, um, thought leaders, coaches. There were, people that we were working with that were selling books, physical products, all sorts of stuff, right? Real estate companies. And so I was not unaware of this world, but I was also like, it was also new to me that like, oh, people buy courses online. Interesting. And so I was kind of like, I was there at the digital agency for a few years. So I was kind of like ready for a change. I was really kind of thinking of getting out of marketing. And so they're like, well, you know what? We're actually hiring for somebody to do support. I was like, cool. What kind of support? Like, oh, mostly email. Like, cool. No phone calls, nothing. Okay, cool. I'll do that. And so, long story short, a couple weeks later, I was part of the team. I was on the support team. I was doing technical support by email, and that was it. I came in first day, got the training, met the people, got a desk, got an IKEA desk, and brought my laptop out and got to work. And so I was doing that. There's actually a guy named Patrick Kelly. Patrick, if you're listening to this, man, hope you're doing well. But yeah, Patrick Kelly and I, we were doing support, and we were doing probably 80 to 100 emails a day. And I remember because we were doing tallies of how many emails we were answering, and we were actually kind of competing just for fun, to make the day go by faster. We would compete and be like, yo, man, I bet you I can get 100. It's like, all right, cool, like, let's see. Like, I bet you I can get 50 by lunch, 50 emails replied to by lunch. Anyways, made the day go by, and it was great. We were working with another guy named Mike, another really really smart, brilliant technical guy, and it was a good time. About 6 months into it, I was like, man, I had a about a 45-minute commute each way on the train, and because I lived in the suburbs at the time. And so I was like, man, on the way home, I would like kind of scroll through Instagram and stuff. Like, man, like we don't really have much of a presence on Instagram as a company. Maybe I'll go in tomorrow and I'll talk to the team and see if like they'll give me the logins, and I can maybe like post, some Instagram once in a while, maybe once or twice a week, just to like, I'm not going to ask for, I wasn't looking for like more money or like a role or anything. I was just like, just to like make my day interesting, And I kind of saw, I was like, well, nobody's doing it anyway. I think that's kind of where people are hanging out that want to use what we are offering, our platform. And yeah, maybe I'll do that. And so, yeah, so the next day I talked to the team. They're like, yeah, like nobody's really doing it. The last post was like maybe 8, 9 months ago. And yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, okay, Rob, here you go. Here's the login. So I got the logins and I started like, posting, and I would like take pictures, like, again, very cool to have like Friday beers, right? So like every Friday people would kind of come by. There's like some customers or partners or other folks in the tech industry would kind of come by, and there would be drinks and some food and stuff. And so I'd take pictures, I'd post it. Whenever there's like maybe a customer that would come by, we'd take some pictures with them, post it. When there was like maybe a campaign or like a sale or some type of like promotion, I would like, there's always like some type of graphics, right, that we would use to promote it on email or like on our website and stuff. And so I'm like, hey, can I get that picture or that graphic that you guys used for that campaign? And I would post it on social. on our Instagram, and they're like, okay, well, actually, you're doing pretty well on Instagram, Rob. Do you want to take over and handle Twitter as well? It was still Twitter at the time. And okay, cool. Like, how about Facebook? You want to do that too? And so eventually, then you kind of see where this story is going. I became, they're like, hey, why don't you just like join the marketing team? You can be the social media guy. I'm like, cool, I'll do that. No problem. Sure. I was kind of like, you can only do so much support tickets anyway. And like, like, all right, cool. Like, we've done this and all right, here's a new challenge. And so I did that. Eventually, that's kind of the start of marketing. So I'm back in marketing about, I don't know, 6, 8 months into the role of joining the company. And one thing led to another, right? Now it became like part of the marketing team. I would then we would start doing collaborations. And I was like, man, you know what? A lot of our customers kind of collaborate during live streams. We should live stream. I'm like, yeah, we should. And like, okay, who's going to do it? Okay, maybe Rob, you should do it. You're the social media marketing guy. So like, you're the guy that's okay. Sure. Let's figure that out. And so I tried to I figured out the live streams. I remember the first live stream that we did was with Eric Sue, brilliant guy. He works with Neil Patel at the time, and we did an interview on Facebook Live on the Thinkific Facebook page, and then also their Facebook page. It was like a collaboration, and I remember like the video was sideways. It was just a mess, but really quickly learned that like, hey, this is how influencers, and at the time they were kind of called influencers, I guess. This is how influencers really did. This was their, um, I guess you would call this is their currency, is collaborations and exchanging attention in this way. They have a built up audience, and they then traded that attention with the audience they built up through these collaborations. So like, all right, cool. Like, how do we do more of these? And so that became a thing. Do regular live streams. I would kind of take that on. We would do interviews and we would do collaborations. And then so that became a thing. So then basically it became part of the partnership team, handled affiliates, started going to events, getting to know and meet some of these creators and some of these influencers in person, really building up their relationships. At the time, too, I started meeting other brands, just because then it's like, cool, like, hey, we are working with these creators, these entrepreneurs, these influencers. But you know who else is working with them? These other brands. And these other brands are not competitors to us, they actually complement us, right? And so I'm going to leave this next story, the next chapter for the next episode here on the podcast. But that's when I then met my future team members and my future employers after Thinkific. Um, was at a conference and also through collaborations that we did. And we'll talk about that in the next episode. All right. So that's how I got into tech. Honestly, just kind of saying yes to opportunities, doors that would open, and it was just like being really open to new opportunities in that way. And having an open mind about it. And it was just like it was so smooth, right? I think now, and I think back, it's like, man, these things are so easy. And I just like, you know I don't know what you guys believe and kind of like where your faith kind of stands, but it was just like such a God thing to like open these doors. These doors I never even knew were there, but I just kind of kept on walking one step at a time. And I just always like looking back, I'm like, man, God opened those doors. I could never have opened them. I didn't even know those doors were there. And just God continued to open and make it smooth and make the path so easy, right? I think even now as me and my wife talk to our kids, it's like, man, when things are so like prepared for you in that way, just like how a parent is with their kids, like, I'm gonna prepare a way for you. I think that's just how God works too. It's just so cool to look back and just like really just like, man, you know what, man, all those doors, that's crazy. Like, what was I it was just so smooth. kept on walking one step at a time. This door would open. I would meet this person, and they would be like, "Hey, Rob, like this is great." Like, and so I'll share more of that in the next chapters of my career, and just that just continued. Just having the obedience to follow and just take the next step, one step at a time. I didn't see the whole thing. I didn't see the whole play, you know. To be honest, I really like there was definitely times where I'm like, I don't know if this is right, but I just feel like, man, God is opening this door here. And so let's walk through it. So, anyways, I hope you enjoyed that story. That's really just how I got into tech. And the it just keeps on going. And so I'm excited to share the next chapter in the next episode. But so far, hopefully you guys enjoyed that story and you enjoyed this episode. If you haven't yet, please make sure you subscribe to this podcast, and say hello. I think if you're on Spotify, you can actually leave a comment now. So leave a comment or send me a DM, send me an email. All the info is in the show notes. And I will see you guys in the next episode. Take care.